Fighting in the UFC. All right, so first time I ever saw this, it was called the Ultimate Fighting Championship. I cut class my junior year in high school and went with my buddy Jeff Williams down to a video store. A mom and pop video store, right? We used to have Hollywood and Blockbuster. Did you guys have those? And they're all completely gone, except either a Blockbuster or Hollywood still exists in Bend, Oregon. Different time though, right? I'm reminiscing. They also had mom and pop ones. You go in, you'd rent something, you rewind it, you bring it back, you put it through the little slot if they're closed. But this is what you did for entertainment on the weekends. Jeff and I were down at this little mom and pop one. And we found a tape, the UFC, and we were told, and it might have said this right on the cover, but we were told that it was banned in banned in 48 of the 50 states. And as I smartened up and started to realize that was probably in relation to the rules and what commissions and where you could actually hold it, at that time we interpreted it to mean that in 48 states, this very tape that we had in our hands couldn't even be seen. And we either slipped through the cracks here in Oregon and we're about to go home and watch something that we're not supposed to, or Oregon is one of the 2 states where it is allowed. Either way, that was a big selling feature for us. Thought we were doing something we weren't supposed to be. Up to his house we go, we put it in and we watch it. And when it popped up, they made it very clear there was no rules. I went back there, I got number 2 and number 3 and number 4, and somewhere along the way, they kept saying no rules, no rules, no rules. There was no rules, no judges, and no time limits. I mean, they would just push this on you, and then the same thing came out, except all of a sudden, there was some judges, of which were there the entire time. They just weren't mentioned. Well, now they were mentioning them. And there was time limits. They were very unlikely you'd ever get to them because they were 30 minutes, but it did actually exist. And as for what you could and could not do, there was only 3 things. Do not pull his hair, do not touch his eyes, and you don't bite the son of a bitch. So when your rules are no eye gouging, no pulling of the hair, and no biting, would it be fair if we just said you had no rules? Because I think that it is. Like, of all the things on God's earth you could think to do, and you're allowed to do any of them except for these 3, of which honor, sportsmanship, the slightest amount of class would prevent you from doing anyway, it feels as though in more of a broad stroke, you have no rules. Can we agree on that? And do they really need to put anywhere that there's no biting? Like, I highly doubt if we went through all of the mainstream sports that you've seen, I highly doubt if we went through ping pong, if we went through golf, if we went through basketball, if we went through tennis, I'm making these up, if we went through diving, if we went through swimming, if we went through gymnastics. I mean, I'm just throwing sports now out around them, but I highly doubt that we will find a rule that says they can't bite. Now, we all know that you're not allowed to bite, but it is so silly and ridiculous that that would ever happen that I'll bet you if we went and checked any of those sports, baseball, football, I mean, think of the real big ones, I'll bet you there's no non-biting rule actually written down. There's a number of rules that aren't written down. In none of those sports can you hit a guy with your car. Well, who would ever hit a guy with his car? Well, should we write it down? I mean, it's that insane. It's that silly and ridiculous. Nobody's going to bite somebody. Not to mention you can't bite somebody you have a mouthpiece in. Can we agree that this perception, I make a levelly good point? Okay, great. So, I know about a bite. I was at a bite. Now, I saw a bite on TV. So did all of you. That was when Mike Tyson bit Evander Holyfield. And what was so interesting about that is the mouthpiece. The mouthpiece are very difficult to get out. Like a boxer would have a hard time with that glove, right? They can do it, but they have a very hard time. It is generally, in about 10 out of 10, their trainer or manager will get in and know how to get that mouthpiece out. It's a very difficult thing to do with a boxing glove on. So Mike was trying to spit that mouthpiece out because Mike biting Evander was so completely premeditated. And we could see him when they were clinched. We could see Mike moving his mouth. He was trying to get it out. At one point, he spit it out. The referee saw him spit it out, picked up and put it back in. Assumed it was an accident. And a round, if not two, later, Mike finally got it out and he bit the ear. Okay, great. But that was premeditated. I remember it so well. And it was such a moment. And everybody was confused, including Evander. Like, they kept trying to explain to Evander that he'd bit his ear off, that little thing over there on the ground, that's your ear. And Evander was, like, confused. Like, what do you mean he bit off my ear? It was one of these strange moments. Okay, great. Well, I happened to see one. We're in Dallas for the 2000 Olympic trials. And Matt Lindland had just had a screw job of a call go against him. And it was going to cost him the Olympic team. And I mean, it really would be difficult for me to tell you how blatant and what a mistake it was by the referees to not call an illegal leg foul in this match. And that went for the opponent and it cost Matt. And Matt was so frustrated that during the match, at some point, they're clinched up, and he bit the ear. Now, he wasn't looking for like a Mike Tyson. He was not looking to actually do damage or hurt or to get the match stopped. He did want a distraction, and Matt wanted to be able to get to the body, get him down, and score his points. Now, I don't need to digress the X's and O's in that. And me explaining that Matt's intent was only to score isn't to make it look as though Matt did a better or not as bad of a thing, but that is the way that the story went, and those are my experiences with biting. Pretty limited. Watched this my whole life, starting in 1993. I see a cage fight or some level of competition every single weekend, without exception since. Those are my two experiences with biting. The Mike Tyson one that you all saw, a Matt Lindland one that most of you did not see, but possibly heard of, and that brings us to Saturday. Igor went out there and bit Lima. And I, to this point in time, don't know why. I don't know what it was Igor was looking to achieve. I know what Mike wanted to do. Mike was frustrated and he was getting hurt and he wanted to hurt Evander. He wanted to do pain. He had very bad intentions inside of him. Matt Lindland wanted to create a distraction. Make Keith flinch a little bit, go to his ear, look away, something like this so that Matt could attack and score his points. I don't know what Igor was after. Do you? Do you guys know what he was trying to do? And if you look at that bite, you see the top marks and you see the bottom marks. And I'm jumping ahead on this, guys. I'm assuming that you know the story. You know that Dana White has banned Igor for life. That was his debut and his final fight. He is one and done, for good. I'm assuming that you know Dana White gave a $25,000 bonus to Lima. Lima then went and got a tattoo and got the teeth marks put on him forever. Dana saw it and gave him another $25,000 because he thought that was great attitude. I'm assuming that you know all of these things. But I have seen a lot of teeth marks in the sport of wrestling. You also cannot bite somebody in wrestling. As a matter of fact, if you claim a guy bit you, including if the referee doesn't see it, if there are bite marks, the referee will disqualify that guy right away. And it has become a little bit of a problem because a bite, when I say it, and I think when your ears hear it, is defined specifically to somebody who intended to bite you. But in wrestling, it's not always that case. We have something known as a crossface in wrestling. We have a number of things in wrestling where you would bring your arm and it would go right across the guy's face, which means you would be taking your own arm into the guy's mouth. And if you continue to push and his teeth are exposed, it's going to show you those bite marks, even if he never meant to do it, and more importantly, doesn't clamp down. And this got tested in wrestling a number of times, where a kid would get up and say, he bit me. You'd see the marks, there'd be blood. Referee who didn't even say would stop the match and disqualify the kid, to the point that I had a guy, my own teammate, got put in a precarious position and bit himself. Jumps up to his feet and tells the ref, he bit me. Ref says, what? He shows him the marks, which is what the rule says you have to do. And the referee instantly disqualified the other guy. My buddy bit himself, told the referee it was the other guy, showed him the marks, which is what the rule book says. So I'm only sharing with you, even when I saw these in wrestling, it was generally the top teeth. It was very unusual that we saw on Lima within the tattoo, the top teeth and the bottom teeth. Because now it makes you wonder, where was the mouthpiece? You could not produce those kinds of bite marks unless it was in the absence of a mouthpiece. So where was the mouthpiece? You guys might have that answer. I don't. I'm wondering. And moreover, even when I've seen it in wrestling, it's because a guy gets into a bad position. There's chokes in wrestling. Choking is not legal in wrestling, but there are guys that are choking in wrestling. And you'll see a guy, as a matter of trying to defend himself, where he'll chomp down. I can't explain what Igor was trying to do. I can't explain what threat he found the inner lobe of Lima's bicep to be. I don't know. I'm curious. I'm asking you, do you guys understand? We know he can't bite. We're not going to make an excuse for him. We know that the punishment of lifetime ban is very sincere, so we're not going to kick him. But if we're attempting to understand what happened and why, which just means what was in the mind, if you were to guess what Igor bit him for, was it just anger? Was he about to be choked? Was he not thinking clearly?
Was he hungry, Chael?
Was he hungry? What? Thank you, Ryan Parsons, for that. Was he hungry? I don't know. And I'm curious. And I'm going to get out now, guys, but I want to say one thing, which is Lima was asked about Igor biting him and what he thought should be done. And Lima only said one thing, which is, I do not think he should be fired. He said it's hard enough to make a living. It's a hard market out there right now for jobs. This was a mistake, but he was punished. He was disqualified. This is a learning moment for everybody, and I'm very confident that he won't do it again. I do not want him to be fired. Now, that's too late. That decision already came down. But that's a beautiful message, right? I mean, not for nothing. That's a very beautiful message, and that was very kind-hearted sportsmanship by Lima. And possibly the most important part of the story, I wanted to make sure that you were aware of it.